Hi there, my name is Jonathan Lindo, and I'm one of the founders here at Replay Solutions. I'm going to take a couple of minutes just to walk you through our product, Replay Director, and show you what it's capable of. So we'll start off by logging into this sample web application, which is actually being recorded as we speak. Everything that's happening in the background on the server, which is currently running Tomcat with the database in the background, is being recorded. And here's an example of an exception has been thrown from the application. We can see that there's a pretty nasty stack trace here. I'm going to sign out. I've actually already captured now with Replay Director everything about this particular failure that I'm going to need in order to analyze that. So I'm here in Eclipse. I'm going to actually stop the server, and I'll flip over to my Replay Director analyzer view. And from here, we get a very quick view of exactly what took place in this particular application. We have CPU and memory charting here. We're also showing some of the bad things that happened indicated by these red lines. And if I drill down into this, we can quickly get a look at all of the events that were captured during the recording of this web application. We can see that there were quite a few log messages and database calls, exceptions, etc. And if I drill down into these, we can have a quick look at the different types of events, filter out the ones that we're not interested to start off with, and sort by priority. We can see that we had a fatal message as well as an error message here. So I'm going to actually highlight that and sort by timestamp. And now if I look at what was going on around that particular event, I can see that we had some HTTP transactions coming in, accessing the All Accounts page. Well, let's actually turn on exceptions and see what happened around that time. So if I scroll back to that particular event, we can see that we had this fatal exception, fatal log message preceded by this exception, which looks like it originated from somebody trying to access a particular page in my web application. So what I'm able to do now is actually set breakpoints on these and go back and look at the source code and understand better exactly what was going on when this particular problem happened. So let me actually throw some breakpoints on these events. I'm going to ask Replay to actually run me back to the line of source code where this particular issue occurred. So what's happening now is we're actually replaying the entire application live in a virtual container that's completely seamless to the application. So it's running in the replay container, and there's no database actually present at the moment. There's no client load on the application, and here we can see that we've actually broken directly at the source code line where this particular event occurred. If I flip over to my breakpoints, we can see we actually have live breakpoints that I set a moment ago on those events. And this is a live running application. I have all my threads running here, about 30 different threads, and here's my call stack. I can actually single step through some of the code here, see that we've thrown an exception, and here we are, we've just hit another breakpoint, which is the actual throw of that exception that we saw a moment ago. And then we reach that fatal log message, which is the third breakpoint that we actually set earlier. So what I've been able to do is actually, in just a few seconds, without having to set up any environment, I was able to take that recording, replay back to the exact line of code where that problem happened, and I'll just let that resume and run through. So you can see that by just capturing that exception, Replay is now able to tell me and actually show me all of the events that took place and let me run back to those in source code. Now, let's say, for example, I want to go back and look at debug level logging. Well, I can actually do that by doing what we call amplify. And by amplifying this recording, what it's now doing is it's going to replay the recording, but actually extract much more information than was originally collected when this recording ran. If you watch this red line go across the screen, that's the amplification happening in the background. And now we can see that we've just gone from having a recording which was aware of just a few events, some of those critical events. Now we can drill down. We have several thousand events, including many, many exceptions that we've captured, and I can drill down into those and actually have a look at all the details. This is going to include debug logging, database information. For example, let's have a look at some database calls. I'm going to turn off some of these things to reduce the noise. But we can have a look at, for example, database calls. And now I have the ability to look at that critical event that we saw earlier, that fatal exception, and actually see, well, what was the database activity that was happening around that fatal log message. And we can see that we had here a query going into my database, looking at the accounts table. Prior to that, we had something looking at the stored views table. And this is actually the original source of the problem that occurred. And I've just gone back and collected that information without having to run my application again. I simply amplified the data, and I can once again set a breakpoint on that and actually run back to the source code and see what happened. Now, one of the nice things that you can do with this is not only amplify things like database calls and not have to worry about the overhead that you would incur by collecting database call information at runtime. This is something we can go back in time and actually collect. I can also get things like debug level log statements. So if you want to see, well, what would the debug logs have been if I had that turned on when the problem happened? Well, now you can actually see that information because debug logs can be amplified. And so here's the actual database call that caused the problem to occur in the first place. And you can see that I've got all my variables here live in memory. If I scroll down, we can actually see what altered query is currently set to in memory. You can see it's this database call. It's about to go into the system, and I'll continue to step through that. And we can see that this actually was the result, or the cause, I should say, of an exception that was actually thrown in the code. We continue to step, and we can see, well, now we've actually got this error processing the query. So all of that is really helpful in getting you back to the problem that you're looking for. And in addition to having all these analytics, you can also go back and search for things that you might not have seen originally. So this is all backed up as well with a very rich web interface that you can access in addition to that. And you can actually check that out at replaycloud.com. I'll just log in here quickly. Actually, sorry, let me do this myself. Log in here and show you what you can actually do from this web interface very quickly. And so it starts off with a dashboard interface that you can actually see certain information that's been captured. Scroll over to the recordings, and we can actually see all those recordings that have been captured either on my computer or on some of my colleagues' computer, wherever they may be in the world. So all these recordings are uploaded to this central repository where we can drill down and inspect exactly what was captured by the recordings. Here we're seeing the actual user sessions, and I can drill down into any of these user sessions and actually have a look at what was captured as part of that user session. And here's the actual user experience that was recorded. We can follow this through as they access this particular application, and we can see that eventually this particular user actually ran into an error as well that we saw on the screen. And so very useful. And if I flip over to the markers view, we can actually see that yes, an exception was caught in this particular recording, and now you can actually just replay to that, which will bring you right back to the exact line of code where that occurred here in your debugger. So very powerful tool for helping you very rapidly get back to the root cause of issues at the source code level. This is the very short version of this. I would encourage you to check out more information at replaysolutions.com. And thank you so much for your attention.